So I welcome all of you who have joined, and I welcome our guest speaker today, Rohit Verma. Myself is Madhusudan. I am the CEO of San Madhur. We are into corporate event management, HR solutions, and certain other activities. Like we recently launched one new initiative called Journey Towards Excellence, where we brought in people from different fields to showcase their life journey in about half an hour time. So that's in brief. And thank you so much, Alvin Integrated, for organizing these knowledge sharing sessions. This being the 10th one in this ISO knowledge sharing series, and IT disaster recovery being part of ISO 22301. So we have not mentioned 22301, but this is applicable to all industry and all verticals. And Alvin is doing really a good job. We are all integrated together in this journey of learning. So today's topic is going to be IT disaster recovery practices, myths, and reality. Rohit will focus lights on all the doubts if you may have during his presentation. Now, if I talk about Rohit, Rohit is industry leader in various domains related to IT disaster recovery, BCM risk, vendor risk management, health and safety. Basically, Rohit is a package. He is based out of Mumbai, but now since we are digitally connected, yet though we are physically not in touch with each other, but socially, yes, we are. So learning goes on. And with Rohit is a CBCP, he's a certified business continuity professional from DRI, and then he holds qualifications like CISA, ISACA. He's an MBA also. He holds this what you call corporate security, health and safety management, specifically risk management. Rohit is an author also, and he has written a book, the handbook, which is called the Emergency Management Handbook. So today's session is going to be an eye opener, I'm sure. With a lot of people have joined who are already industry leaders, and I can see so many people who have joined. I can just name a few. If I have permission, we have Anirudh Gopinath, we have Meenu George, we have Atif from Malaysia, Mr. Mohammed from Nigeria joining us. So all of the people. So I welcome all of you. Namaste, salam, good evening. With these words, before I welcome Rohit to take over, a brief about today's key points which are going to be discussed. A few of them are corporate practice in ITDR. What are the minimum set of ITDR documentation required? The typical audits, the practical approach, myths and realities in DR drills, and so on and so forth. So Rohit will take on from here and will take you through this journey of learning related to IT disaster recovery. When I say IT disaster recovery, there are three components I talk about: information technology, then disaster, and then recovery. Now, today, IT is of utmost importance. Due to this COVID, we are not allowed to just move in here and there, but at the same time, we are allowed to interact with each other, and the courtesy is IT only. So there is a greater emphasis on disaster recovery from COVID with the help of IT. So with these words, over to you, Rohit, with special thanks to Alvin Integrated Services. Over to you, Rohit.
Thank you, Madhusudanji, for your kind words and for sharing the introduction. Let me share my presentation. Madhusudanji or Suhanji, if you can help me, it is showing the host as disabled participant screen sharing. So if you can allow my screen sharing, please.
Please try now.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you able to see the agenda screen?
Not yet.
Yeah, it is come now.
Yes, sir. It is visible now.
Okay. So gentlemen, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I believe there are maybe a few ladies. So welcome to this session. Uh, the topic is IT disaster recovery and the related aspects of the disaster recovery as we practice it in our corporates and our organizations, and some aspects of the real life challenges that we face. I believe in the audience we have DR professionals and who are aspiring to join the business continuity and disaster recovery profession. So I welcome them also. And keeping the mixed audience in mind, considering the students as well as the professionals, I have prepared the presentation keeping in mind that it gives a general overview of specifics on the corporate practices. So with that in mind, this is what we are going to cover today. Concepts of disaster recovery, and disaster recovery. What does a good IT disaster recovery framework look like? What typical terms that are used when we practice the disaster recovery? We will also look at some disaster recovery scenarios and what is the typical response that we have when we face certain incidents or certain outage situations. We will look at how DR drills are conducted and what are the realities as compared to having good documentation and what are the myths and realities around it. We'll touch upon what is a manual, a DR recovery and what is an automated DR recovery. We will look at some of the important DR documentation that is required from an audit point of view and also some aspects of audit queries which we usually face in the practicing profession and how we can be better prepared so that we don't have audit queries. And lastly, we will also look at some of the regulatory requirements around the IT disaster recovery. So with this agenda, let me begin with the discussion. Before we do any kind of IT disaster recovery, it is important to understand the organization. So you have lines of businesses, uh, various business lines, which are your revenue earning departments, and then that all needs certain facilities, certain buildings, certain premises where they can all operate. So when you have the facilities, the buildings, the infrastructure around the buildings, right, that gives us a level of comfort and assurance to start your operations. But the underlying infrastructure where the businesses conduct their operations is given by the IT. So when we talk of the businesses, IT goes hand in hand. And when we look at the IT infrastructure, one important component is how the IT setup is done. Where is the primary data center? Where is the alternate data center? How are the recovery done? How are the applications recovered? And all of it goes into an ITDR plan, which we'll look at in a bit. And overall, when we look at the entire business continuity and disaster recovery framework, we will see that business continuity is a larger framework and IT disaster recovery is an important subset within the larger business continuity management framework. So essentially, what does business continuity management framework cover? It covers three aspects. We have to ensure that we cover people continuity. We have to look at processes, whatever are the critical processes running at the moment. Those need to be continued in case of an IT situation or in case of a BCM situation. And we need to ensure that we have IT continuity. So if we take care of these three aspects, people, process, and IT, then perhaps we can say that we have reasonable assurance that our business operations will continue in the wake of any outage or any incident. But if we miss out on any aspect of preparation or organizational support in any of these areas, then any incident that we may face may not have the right response readiness that is expected. So let's look at how do we define a disaster and what is a disaster recovery. So if you look at disaster, it is basically a sudden, unplanned, catastrophic event causing unacceptable damage or loss. an event that compromises an organization's ability to provide critical functions. Now, what is important in or a BCM or a DR situation is not everything on a day-to-day basis is critical. The organization runs various processes, runs various activities and tasks. Only some of it will be critical. And in an outage situation, in a crisis situation, what is important is that we are able to focus and require the critical operations, the critical processes, services, critical resources. And how do we do that? Let's look at the disaster recovery definition. This basically DR is the technical aspect of business continuity. While the business continuity itself is not a technical subject, all you need is a passion for the subject. All you need is a understanding of the business environment, what is happening in your business environment or in the company or in the industry where you are working, and an appreciation of what is the environment, internal and external. But once you have had that, the IT disaster recovery focuses on the technical aspects of the continuity. So it is basically a collection of resources and activities to re-establish the IT services as against the people aspect or the process aspect, which the larger business continuity framework looks at. This is something which focuses only on the technical aspects, which covers the re-establishing of the IT services. So let us look at, before we go further, let's look at what is the basic difference between business continuity and disaster recovery. So business continuity, essentially, when we talk of, it talks about recovery of critical business processes, departments, functions, people, processes. And when we talk of disaster recovery, it basically focuses on enterprise-wide IT applications and supporting IT infrastructure. So that's the basic difference. IT disaster recovery focuses purely on IT environment, IT setup, IT readiness, whereas business continuity is more on the critical businesses, processes, people, departments, functions, facilities, services, and all of the related variables. Also, when we talk of business continuity plan, the recovery time objective, which also I'll come to in just a bit, the recovery time objective is usually measured in just about in days or weeks. And the company, depending on its processes, can be a little flexible in having the systems back, the processes back. But when we talk of the disaster recovery plan, the RTO is usually measured in very short time durations, which is just in minutes or in hours, not more than that. And recovery time objective basically is the time within which your processes should be up and running. You cannot afford any extension or any delay in recovery of those processes and the systems and working operations beyond that time. That's the shortest time within which your system should be able to come back to the normal operations. So with this in background and considering that we have some students also in the audience, let's do a small exercise and I'll give you some scenarios. All you need to do is see the scenario and share your thoughts on what do you think. This is the situation where you will invoke a business continuity or will you invoke an IT disaster recovery. So let's look at some of the scenarios. The first one, massive floods have prevented all staff from reaching their offices. So what friends, what do you think? This is a business continuity situation or this is a IT situation?
So this is business continuity situation.
Business continuity.
Absolutely. This is a business continuity situation because your staff is prevented from being able to enter your workplace. So it is the primary workplace which is impacted, but the IT center, IT disaster site or the primary data center is all intact. There is nothing wrong that has happened to it. Let's look at the second scenario. SAP application for a major bank is down.
So this is a disaster recovery, IT disaster recovery.
This is an IT disaster. Yes, this is purely dealing with IT, the IT application, and directly impacting the users. Right. So there is nothing wrong that has happened with the user's workplace. They are perfectly fine. They are coming to their usual place as they always do on a day-to-day basis. But it is the systems that have gone down. So this is a situation which you may have to consider whether it is a need to invoke a DR. Let's look at the third situation. A cyber attack has stopped all operations of a commodity exchange.
IT disaster. Sir.
Are you sure it's only IT disaster?
So it's
It's
both
both.
BCM and DR.
Both. IT disaster and business continuity management.
Exactly. This is both. So that's where some little, appreciation of the business continuity also comes in and disaster recovery. Because when a cyber attack happens, it may not restrict itself only to the data centers. It may not restrict itself only to the IT centers. It may impact the end users directly also. Right. So this is a situation where you may have to invoke both business continuity as well as an IT disaster recovery. Let's look at the fourth scenario. A major network outage has stopped all business transactions.
This is
IT
also
disaster.
both
BC and DR.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Again, this can be a situation where not only your data centers are impacted, but also the branches
Both.
which are connected with the various network lines, they also could be impacted. So you need to invoke both. A citywide power grid failure during business hours.
Both, sir.
Both, exactly. Right? So it can affect both your users as well as your IT environment. And lastly, let's look at this. A major fire leading to a complete building evacuation.
BC.
Business continuity.
This is
Business continuity.
business continuity, absolutely. Because absolutely, yeah, right. So the responses are more or less. So this is where the thinking goes that what we have to first ascertain and identify what is the situation we are dealing with on hand. Is it something that is impacting only the end users? Is it something that is impacting the IT environment? And then the next stage comes that what information do we have, and how do we decide whether the next steps would involve business continuity or IT disaster recovery? So with this in mind, with this little background, let's look at the IT disaster recovery governance framework look like. So as with all organizational functions, you need to have a DR team. The DR team will comprise of the IT DR head and the SMEs around the IT environment. That covers areas like operating systems, database, network, security, storages. All of these experts in their respective domains, the their respective environments will comprise the DR organization. And like with any other policy, like you have an HR policy, you have a travel policy, likewise, you need to have a DR policy, which will say what goes into a DR planning, what is the DR team looking like, what are the applications in scope, how often you should do the drills, how will you keep the management informed of the DR posture in an organization, how frequently various documents need to be made, what are the minimum documents to be made, all of that, what the entire governance process in a summary will be mentioned in a DR policy, and we need to ensure that we are all users and the teams are complying with the policy. The third aspect of the governance framework will cover the critical applications. So when we have done a business impact analysis by the business continuity team by interacting with various departments, one critical output of the business impact analysis is identifying what are the critical applications for the department and for the organization as a whole. And once we have the critical applications, those inputs are given to the IT team and the DR team, and then they need to ensure that at least all the critical applications have a DR in place. And what is DR, we'll come to that as well. So unless the critical applications are protected by having a DR, the organization runs a risk that if there is any incident or outage which is impacting your primary data center, then you may not be able to recover and work for your critical applications which do not have a DR. So that requires to be considered. Likewise, when you have applications, so there has to be application owners who understand the application, the architecture of the application, the network topology, how the applications are mapped to different users, which applications are used by different users, where do these users operate from, what are their locations, all of that needs to be considered. And for all the critical applications, you need to see what is the recovery time objective, what is the recovery point objective, and I'll just come to that in a bit. And once we have that information, what is critical, what are the critical applications, then we look at how we develop a DR strategy. What should go into a DR strategy, how soon the DR recovery has to be done, who are the users likely impacted, what are the scenarios. So all of that would go into the DR strategy. You will then start working on developing primary site as well as the DR site. And this is with the focus that, let's say, you have to start from scratch by designing the entire DR framework. If you're working in an organization, or if you plan to work in an organization where already these things are available, then you need to understand them and ensure that those are maintained in good state and in readiness of recoverability at all points of time. But if you have to set it up from completely scratch, then these are the thoughts that will go into making the DR governance framework. You need to ensure that there are right checks and balances established in the DR implementation. Wherever there are applications which do not need a DR, there has to be a process for giving dispensation for those applications. The physical and environmental controls, like the physical access, the biometric controls, the fire safety, the CCTV controls, all of those, the climate controls in the premises, data centers, DR sites, all of that also play a very important role to ensure a smooth running of the business operations. And there are certain documents like the DR plan, run books, having a DR drill calendar, the DR drill plan. And towards the end, whatever good work that you are doing in your organization, how will you keep your management informed about what is the current DR posture in your organization? So that can be done by means of a dashboard or a scorecard, which you can present on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis to your management to let them know what is the DR posture. Is it looking green, or are there any areas of concern where you may need the management support? Okay. Now with this little background, let's look at some of the terms that I have used so far. And understanding of these terms will help as we go ahead with the discussion. So there are some basic terms which we need to understand. So let's begin with some of them. Like, for example, the production. When we talk of production, essentially it is your primary data center where all the data of the organization resides. So let's take an example of a bank, a very large bank, which has branches, which has, let's say, 10,000 branches across your country where you're operating. So all the users, all the employees working on the terminals, on the computers of those branches in different cities across the country, no data is residing actually on their individual terminal. It's all traveling back to a primary data center. And this primary data center is what we call as production in our technical discussions in the industry. So we have a primary data center. Then there are concepts of near DR and far DR. Near DR is a site which is readily available, perhaps geographically nearby, but may not have absolute entire functionality as your primary data center. You may not invest 100% as you have invested in a primary data center, but nevertheless, it is a warm site which is available with the applications, with the hardware, with the network links, with the environment, such that if there is a need, you can activate the near DR site within a shortest possible time and make it operational. But you may not have to keep it on at all times and incur recurring expenses. So that's one side where you can, quickly go to make it operational and start working from the near DR side. The third is the far DR site, which is in a different city, in a different state. It has to be reasonably away from your primary data center, such that if there is any seismic risk in the primary city where your primary data center is, the same risk is not existing in the alternate site or in the alternate city. So risk like earthquake, all of that needs to be factored into when you are planning a DR site. So that has to be reasonably away. So for example, in Indian context, if your primary data center is, let's say, in Mumbai, then your far DR site has to be, let's say, in Bangalore or Chennai, so that the seismic risk is taken care of. Recovery time objective and recovery point objective. Recovery time objective essentially is the time within which the user would like their businesses and processes to be coming back available, so that they can start working after the incident in the business as usual time. So it can be a few hours or it can be a few days, depending on the work that is being done by different departments in the organization. So it's a time factor within which your processes, your system should be back up, and the user is not spending any more time not spending any more delay in continuing to work. The recovery point objective, on the other hand, is the maximum data loss that any business process owner is happy to accept. Beyond that, the process owner may not be comfortable. So he will define that, okay, I am okay with the data loss of, let's say, 1 minute or 5 minutes or perhaps half an hour or 1 hour, but really not more than that, depending on the industry, depending on the function. So if you look at the banking industry, if you are a customer and you are going to a bank ATM and you get a message that the ATM is not working, then you are not a happy customer. You are not a happy customer of that bank or the third party bank which has put up the ATM. You would expect as a customer that the ATM services are always available. So when the bank is defining their RPO for the ATM services, that has to be really near zero. It cannot even have a few minutes of downtime, few minutes of data loss. That cannot be the case for a banking organization. So the recovery point objective for a banking organization like that will be like near zero or probably just in a few seconds. They cannot afford any data loss primarily. It has to be zero. Replication is something that relates to how your data moves from your primary data center onto the near data center or to the far DR data center. So when everything is normal, there is no impact, there is no incident, it is just business as usual. Your data is continuously replicating from the primary data center to the far DR site or to the near DR site. And in case if there is any outage or any incident, and a decision has been taken by the DR team and management to invoke DR, and now users are all connecting to the DR site, then all the data that travels back from your DR site back to the primary site is called as reverse replication. So whenever your primary data center is back up and running after the incident has been taken care of and measures have been taken to build up the primary data center again, then whatever data is available in the DR site, all that has to be transferred back from the DR site to the primary site. So that is simply called as a reverse replication. Switchover and switchback essentially are terms which are used when you are doing a planned DR drill. Anytime you plan a DR drill, you would use the terms switchover to go from primary to the DR site and switch back to come back from the DR site to the primary site. And failover and failback are the terms which are used when there is a real DR invocation. It is not a drill, it is not a planned activity, but something that has really gone wrong in the live environment in IT. And that's where you fail over your primary to the DR. And when the primary is back up and running, you have done the necessary steps to bring the primary up, you will fail back again from the DR to the primary. So that's the only difference between switchover and switchback and failover and failback. And rollback is basically when you plan any activity, whether it is a planned drill or you're doing a failover, at every stage you want to do a check that have the steps for this particular phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of the entire activity or the process has been completed. So before you go to the phase 2, you do a check. And if you're not happy or if there is some obstacle, you do a rollback. So rollback essentially means coming back to the original state and not going ahead with your plan of action. That is all that it means. It may apply to switchover activity, it may apply to switchback, or it may apply to failover and failback. Rollback is simply saying that we'll not go ahead to the next phase, we'll roll back to the original state as it was before we started the activity. So with these little terms, I thought it was important to discuss these terms as we go ahead. But for this, before I go ahead, let me take a small pause and ask if any audience member, any participant has any questions or queries so far before we go ahead.
Rohit, I have one question, please.
Yes, please.
Can we call the BCP and DRP as a contingency plan?
Contingency plan is more associated with the building and the infrastructure. So for example, you have building AC, you have the building air conditioning systems, the chiller plants, the utilities, the water facilities, the maintenance, all of that, which relate to the building where you're working. It could be a user, workplace area, or it could be a data center building. But contingency plan is more associated with the building and the building infrastructure. But when it comes to business continuity plan, it is little more around the businesses, the processes, the recovery of the people, and those areas. And disaster recovery plan is purely related to IT disaster recovery.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. All right. So if there are any questions, we can discuss it during the course. Let's look at the the manner in which the DR strategy is developed. So what are the typical outages that we usually face? Usually it is the hardware that goes wrong, or there's a component failure at the primary data center. And the component failure could mean there could be a router, there could be switches, servers, network links can go wrong, applications can go wrong, something can go wrong in the operating system or the databases. So all of these situations lead to outage situations. And in overall, there can be something wrong in the building itself, like a major fire or an earthquake or a power failure. So if all of these situations are considered and there are plans for recovery or for managing such situations, we can reasonably get an assurance that yes, we may not reach a situation where we have to invoke real DR. Now, if you look at just a primary data center, for example, the power failure, we had a power failure very recently in Bombay, right? And many businesses were impacted. So according to you, what are the planning that one can do when, let's say, if it is a power failure of a primary data center? So you need to have your UPS in place, you need to have the DG set in place to ensure that the incident does not lead to such a situation that it leads to the invocation of the DR. And only when you find that all the other measures and readiness has really failed and not things are not working out, then you may decide that yes, DR has to be invoked. That too is a formal process by involving the relevant stakeholders in the organization, and it's a joint decision before you really take a big decision of invoking DR. So basically, all of these are the typical outages in any corporate that you face. And add to that the current IT environment, the current risk that comes from the cyber security threats, the cyber landscape, all of that opens up the vulnerability far too much. So let's look at the RTOs and RPOs. When we define a strategy for recovery, how do we define that RTO and RPO? So let's say we are at point zero at the moment, and there is some incident that has happened at point zero. So you will start working on the disruption. You will find out what has gone wrong, what are the circumstances, what is the likely impact. And at point one, after you have made some assessment, you start with the resumption of your critical processes. So the businesses are working back, and the processes are, working back. The critical processes are available. But when the user is starting to work at point one, or at point two, or at point three, how much is the data loss that the user is happy to accept and not beyond that? So that is what is defined by a recovery point objective, the data backup strategy or the data replication strategy. So when you are recovering from point one, how much is the data loss that you are accepting at -1, -2, -3 in terms of time, just in terms of minutes or few hours, nothing really more than that. So this is one element when you define a DR strategy that you need to consider very carefully. And as I was sharing that usually depending on the size of the organization may have simply two sites, one primary site and one for DR site. But if it is a large organization, customer, facing company or an industry, and the transactions are huge, the business volumes are huge, then the company may decide that, okay, let's have one near DR site also. So the master system is your primary data center, and you're linked with your primary data center to the near DR site. And the point C is your far DR, which is in a different city, in a different state. So as you can see, the links coming out from primary point A to point B and point A to point C are active links. They are always available and they are working 24/7. But if you look at the connection between point C, it is a standby link. It is available. You have the infrastructure at the point B, which is the near DR site. You have the infrastructure available at point C. Your applications, network, hardware, the entire IT environment that goes into the near DR site, all of that is available and ready. And within a matter of few steps, with taking a few steps, with a matter of few minutes, you can activate it. So that is giving an additional comfort that not only do we have a DR site, but we also have an interim near DR site, so that we don't have to go full-fledged to the far DR site, which involves more decision making and more complications in the process when we invoke DR. So this is typically a three-site architecture where you have primary site, near DR site, and far DR site. But depending on the organization, you can have a two-site architecture as well, where you have just primary and the far DR site. So let's look at some of the outage scenarios. Usually, either the user workplace is impacted or the IT data center is impacted, the production one. And let's look at what comes up and what we need to do. So let's look at scenario one, where you have user production, which is down, and IT production is perfectly fine. So user is working from his normal workspace and is connecting smoothly from his normal workplace to the primary data center. There is an outage at the primary data center, the primary workplace, and user is not able to access the primary data center. In which case, the user will move over to a third place, could be his own organization's work area recovery site, which is a different site with minimum, with only the critical processes and critical people identified to work from a work area recovery site. Or it can be work from home, it can be a vendor arrangement, it can be a third party arrangement. But anything that will work when your primary workplace is impacted and you need to go to some other third location. So user will go to the work area recovery location or a third party location or work from home and connect from that site back to the IT primary data center, because there is nothing that has happened at the primary data center. So that's where your IT disaster recovery site, which is available, ready, always for use, but it has not been put into action, put into use because the need, the situation was different. Let's look at the second scenario. User production site is up, but now the IT production site is down. So the same scenario, but now there is an outage in the IT production. And this has again disabled the user from working because they are not able to work. So now what will happen is the IT primary data center will fail over, because this is a real outage. It will fail over to the IT DR site, but user will continue to work from his primary workplace. There's nothing that has happened at his primary workplace, so he'll continue to work from there. But instead of connecting to the primary site, he will connect to the DR site. That is the difference. And here the alternate arrangement for the user is available, ready, but not called into action, not called into use. And the third scenario, as you would have guessed by now, where the outage has happened at both the places, the user workplace as well as the IT production, both have an impact. So what will happen is user will go to the identified alternate workplace, and the primary data center will fail over to the DR data center, and user now will connect from a third party place or from an alternate workplace to the alternate DR site. Now this you would appreciate is one scenario which is having the maximum complications. It will require a good amount of planning. It will require a good amount of investment by the organization. So in all circumstances, we as business continuity and disaster recovery professionals need to ensure that we don't let the organization reach a stage where both the sites are impacted. And we should have the readiness to deal with any outage or any situation within a matter of few minutes in its initial stages itself. And that's where the concept of resiliency also comes, that the organization is so resilient in all aspects, in all operations, all processes, that it does not lead to a situation of invocation, whether BCM or DR. Having discussed the concept of disaster recovery, business continuity, what's the difference between BCP and DR, and looking at the DR framework, if it's a new organization for you and you're tasked with the responsibility of setting up the ITDR framework, you would set up all the processes, the governance framework, the primary side, DR side, and when everything is ready, you would want to test it. So how would you go about testing? Right? So there are various ways in which testing can be done. There is a structured walkthrough. There is a component level testing. The structured walkthrough is basically a table-based discussion of the DR plan and the run books. So people come together, the DR team comprising of the IT DR head, the domain experts, the OS expert, database expert, network expert, security expert, storage expert, all of those will be part of the discussion. And they will lock themselves up in one room and go through the entire DR plan and the associated run books to see if there are any major changes that have happened since the last time the DR plan or those documents were made. And if there are any changes, then those changes will be documented, and over the next 1 or 2 days, quickly the documents will be updated. So this is basically to ensure that all your plans, all your documents, processes are up to date and they do not become obsolete. That's one simple, a DR drill or a DR test that you would do. Another is you do a component level testing where you do some network components like routers, switches, your load balancers. So usually you have load balancers in the primary site where you have one load balancer which is sharing a load with another load balancer. And if one load balancer, for example, is not working, will the second load balancer take the entire load? So you do those component level testing and ensure that you manage the situation within that redundant environment, within that extra set of equipment and devices which are available, and you prevent the stage of reaching the DR invocation. So that's one drill that you would like to do. Likewise, you will text the links, whether there are primary links or there are redundant links available to each location, connecting various branches, connecting various nodes. The other drill can be a partial DR drill where you do only a certain set of applications. You switch over from primary to the DR, but not all applications. And the last option, last kind of drill would be where you do all the applications, switch over your network, you switch over your IT infrastructure, you switch over your applications. The entire NT environment is switched over from primary to the DR when you are doing a drill. And when the drill is over, you will again switch back from the DR to the primary. So these are the various kinds of drills that are conducted in the organization. And when we talk of the drill, there is a process. So you have to actually disable certain activities in the primary. You have to disable the applications, stop the database, ensure that the failover, the switchover is smooth. And at the DR site, you have to again bring the application up in the DR site. You have to bring the database up, and then ensure that the network connectivity is established back to the primary site. So all of that is a very, very complex and cumbersome process. And likewise, when you are coming back from your DR site to the primary site, again, you have to do the same steps, switch over the application, stop the DR, stop the reverse application, ensure that your application and database is up in production, and ensure that the users are connected back smoothly from the production to the DR. So all of that, if you have to do manually, you can appreciate that it will be very complex and very tedious job. And that's where the concept of automated delivery comes in. So instead of doing all of these manually, which so far was the practice till few years ago, but now with large organizations and with large and better technologies available, people are going for automated solutions. So at the click of a button, you don't have to do manually, but switch over and switch back, or fail over and fail back happens just at the click of the button. And you have programs written in the automated tools which will take care of the entire switch over and switch back, or fail over and fail back from the primary to the DR and back from DR to the primary. So that's where we use the automated tools. We usually, organizations have come out of doing things manually and have started leveraging the tools that are available. And there are various large organizations which have these tools, and we can discuss that separately. Now, while we do the drills, what is important is that are the drills really being done in a manner which give us real assurance. And many a times we do the drills, but really some myths are associated with the drills, and the satisfaction that you get from the drills is really not real, right? It may be superficial, it may be artificial. So let's look at what is it that is missing when we do a DR drill. Right? In my personal career, if I was to speak of myself, I have done over 500 DR drills, and we have ensured that yes, the DR drills are successful. And we work with various teams, from the IT team comprising of the operating system, the database, network, storage, firewall, security, all of those. And there's a very meticulous planning that goes into ensuring that every drill is successful. And so is the interest and objective of all the team players who are working from the IT side, the business continuity side, the teams working together, that ensure that, yes, we are ensuring that the drill is successful. So the actual preparation for the drill happens, weeks and possibly months in advance. A very micro level planning is done, and it is expected as professionals that we understand and appreciate the level of detail that goes into the planning. Everybody is given specific responsibility. There are regular calls that are held, and we ensure that there is a good coordination. Just before the drill happens, we are again in sync, and we ensure that the entire plan of action, which is there to be executed on the drill day, is perfected and it is executed without any issues, without any flaws. And of course, after the drill is successful, we come out smiling. The management is happy, the stakeholders are happy, the users are happy, and everybody is very relaxed that yes, the drill was successful. But let's get real. Is it really preparation for a disaster? In our in our zeal to be successful, perhaps we have really not factored into the real situations. If there is a real disaster, will the circumstances permit the same level of micro planning that we have had the luxury of doing for 3 to 4 weeks before the drill day? The real disaster will not give you that time. The real disaster will not give you that luxury. It will hit you instantly and you are expected to respond to the situation. If you respond to the situation, knowing the knowledge and the steps, perhaps you may be able to respond. But otherwise, if you are not prepared, if you are not having the same level of coordination, the same level of sync between different teams, you will fail apart. And that is what is really experienced in real disasters. While the drills are invariably always successful, the real disaster situations, we always are caught with some surprises. And that's where the learning goes that yes, certain things we have overlooked, certain things we have not factored into in our planning. So that's one area where we think that yes, the drills will give us the assurance that everything is fine, but it's really not so. We have to be prepared for facing any situation all of a sudden where we do not have the luxury of time, where we do not have the luxury of coordination, and everybody has to play their part to the perfection. The second myth that usually comes when we are doing the drill is while we are planning the test. So the entire test, the drill, the planning goes on for weeks and months in advance. But actually, what are we testing? What are we testing? Essentially what we are testing is a DR plan, right? Whatever is going into the DR plan is what we are going to do the drill about. So while we are planning the test, are we actually testing the plan? We need to ask ourselves. The plan may have certain scenarios, the plan may have certain outage situations, and the plan may have certain dependencies. Have we factored really all of that, or have we taken a convenient way out to ensure that all the difficult aspects of the drill are kept out of scope and we do what is really manageable and something that will keep the management happy and we ensure that the drill is successful? So we are planning for the drill, but we are actually not testing the plan. That's something that we need to look at. Also, many times it is a big challenge to take downtime from the business heads, from the organizations and the management. And when we approach our managements or approach the business heads asking for some downtime for doing a DR drill, the usual response and the challenge that we face is do it at a bare minimum level such that the environment is not impacted. We don't want to be disturbing our customers. We don't want to get into a difficult situation, and ensure that you do a drill, you achieve your objective, be happy, but don't disturb the environment too much, right? We don't find easy way to get acceptable downtime. And essentially, if you look at the management has actually invested in the DR, considering that there may be a big disaster. But after the DR is implemented, the investment has gone, we do not get the opportunity to do a full DR. And that's where one challenge comes in, that the management thinks that yes, the DR is in place, they have invested a lot, there is a team in place, but on the other hand, we do not get the opportunity to do it. So accepting the downtime is important. The management should be conscious of this. We need to work closely with the businesses and let them know that while some amount of downtime may impact the businesses, but nevertheless, if you do not do the testing at all, the real impact can be much more. And that can be only known when you really have that impact if you have not tested. So this is something that, again, the myth that yes, doing the drill with the downtime and doing only the limited scope of applications is enough. One typical example of such a situation is where you do only a few applications testing, not all the applications, and you conveniently leave out your email system, to take a very simple example. In real life, will you really be able to do your business without the basic capability of having email communications? Will it be possible to interact with the suppliers? Will it be possible to interact with the customers? All of that will be very difficult. Merely having certain applications in scope, but not really testing the communications capability actually defeats the purpose of a drill. But usually that is the convenient way of it, and we go ahead. And the fourth aspect that we need to look at is while we may have done these strategies, the processes in place at a particular point of time. Let's say about a year back, we have set in place the DR environment, we have done the resources, we have done the equipment and sizing and everything. And it is usually left at that point of time. But the business is always ever changing. Business always grows every day. The environment is constantly changing. The volumes are increasing, new branches are being opened, new users join, environments change, applications go out of use, the applications go in sunset, new applications come in. But has your DR environment been looked at with respect to all these changes? Have all of these dynamically changing environments, variables being reflected in your DR environment? While the production is working smoothly, the DR may be completely obsolete. It may not have brought itself with the readiness which is required today, as against 1 year back when you had set up the DR. If you have not considered all the dynamic changes that have happened and you have ensured that all the changes are also replicated in the DR. And the businesses also want to avoid making a new business case every time, new investment case every time for the growth that has happened. And all of these things sometimes lead to a situation where, in case of a real invocation, your production environment is talking a different story and your DR environment is way old. It is not ready, it is not capable to take the production load. And that's where all your investment, all your efforts really do not give fruits. So these are some of the myths, some of the realities that we need to be aware of when we are practicing DR drills and we are interacting with the managements and when we are interacting with the businesses. My objective here was limited to provoke you, so to say, to think on those lines. So where do we do? What do we do? Where do we go? Awareness is the first step. Once we have the awareness, we can create that awareness in the organization with the business heads, with the teams, with the management, and take their support and go along. And as in real life, there are no shortcuts. We have to work hard, we have to meet the company's objectives, and we have to ensure that our objectives as business continuity and DR professionals are always met. Because it is the organization which is looking at us as business continuity and disaster recovery professionals to take them out smoothly from the disaster situation. But if we don't raise our voice against the challenges that we face, against what we think the management and the businesses should be aware of, then we are not doing a good job for our own purpose. Let's look at some aspects of documentation. As I said in the beginning, everything has to have a policy. So you have to have a DR policy which will outline how the DR governance framework will look like, what are the regular aspects of the policy, what all things you need to comply with. You need to have equipment inventory of all that is there in your near DR site, in your far DR site. You should have a detailed applications inventory giving details of the topology, the architecture, the operating systems, database, vendor contacts, all of that should be available readily and it should be constantly updated. The DR plan, and we'll look at in just a bit what a DR plan is, what does it look like. The run books, which are typically the technical guidelines of recovery of applications, network, operating systems, database, storages, firewalls, security elements, and each of these need to be documented in detail in the technically recovery guide. And there has to be a DR drill plan. So every time you do a drill, let's say on a quarterly basis, every time you drill, you have to have a drill plan. And after the drill is over, there has to be a drill report, which is shared with the management with the lessons learned. And you keep your management updated on the current posture of DR. Is it green? Is it having some concerns? What support you need by means of a DR scorecard? So that is a typical minimum documentation that you should have. And whatever I have put as asterisks is basically these should be approved. And we'll just look at how having these documents which are not approved can lead to audit queries. So here we discussed about the DR documentation. One element, the fourth element was DR plan. So what is the DR plan? But what is the typical content that goes into the DR plan? And this slide is self-explanatory. You can just go through. I may not go through each and every item, but you will appreciate that DR plan is not a very lengthy document. It is not supposed to be a very comprehensive, very technical, very elaborate, very long document. But the bare minimum that should go into the contents is something that you should be able to recover, and you should be able to refer that document in case of a DR situation and execute those steps. Essential information has to go in it, but the underlying other technical detailed documents can be outside of the DR plan, and the cross-reference to those documents can be made in the DR plan. But everything that you need at that point of time when you have to decide whether DR is to be invoked, and if it is to be invoked, what is to be done, has to necessarily go into the DR plan. So you look at the objectives, the DR site, assumptions, critical systems, RTO, RPO, applications, recovery solution, network, DR invocation process, how do you decide to invoke DR, what are the teams involved, what is the communication methodology, what is the failover failback process. All of that would go into the DR plan. And there will be various annexures. This is just a small list, but in real life, you will have many annexures, critical applications, production DR link, the IP addresses, the config details, all of that would go into the annexures. Likewise, when you talk of runbook, basically the objective of a runbook is something that is made in case if the domain SME who is managing that area like network or applications or storage is not available, that anyone at that point of time who is available should be able to open the runbook, look at the steps, commands and screenshots which are given for his ready reference, and execute those steps to ensure a good failover and a failback in case of a real DR. So essentially this book contains all the technical steps and all the technical guidelines which are required in case if you have any outage which can lead to a DR situation. So runbooks are a very critical component, and they complement and they are part of the main DR plan. And when you are doing a drill, so for every drill, as I said, you need to have a DR drill plan. So it will say what is the purpose of the drill, what is the scope of the drill, what are the objectives you want to achieve, what are the key success factors, what is the drill schedule, when are you doing it, what is the start time, what is the end time, what is the drill scenario that you are testing, and there can be many such scenarios. How is the user going to test? Is user going to be part of the drill or not? What is the drill approach? Is there any circumstance that may lead to a drill cancellation? What is the RTO, RPO you are trying to achieve? So all of that will go into the drill plan. And once your drill is over, you would review these and see whether your objectives are met and whether you will declare the drill as successful, partly successful, or not successful. So this will help you to analyze the drill outcome. Towards the end, let's look at some of the regulatory requirements that are there. So Reserve Bank of India has mandated various guidelines and circulars, and banking is one industry which has a good focus and support from the regulators as against other industries where perhaps such level of regulation is desirable, but at the moment it is not there. But if you look at RBI, they have come out with various circulars and guidelines from time to time, and coming from the regulator, these are mandatory, and any compliance has to be ensured that we are complying with those guidelines. Likewise, SEBI has come out with certain guidelines, IRDA has come out with certain guidelines and circulars, and you need to ensure that we are complying with those rules. And all of this is of course available on the respective regulatory bodies website, and it's available in general public domain also. Towards the end, what I have shared here is just a brief list of the typical audit queries that I have personally faced over the last few years that I have been practicing. And if you look at some of these, for example, the policy non-compliance, everything begins with a policy. And the first thing that your auditor will go and look for is the policy, and he will check whether the policy statements have been complied. If it is asking you to do certain, for example, drills over on a quarterly basis, the auditor will want to see that the drills have been done on a quarterly basis or not. They will check whether there have been regulatory compliances in respect of submission of data of your DR setup applications, critical applications. Have there been any outages in the last 1 year or so? Those need to be reported to the regulator, especially in case of Reserve Bank of India. So they will check whether those compliances have been fulfilled or not. If there is any inconsistency in the production and DR environment, that is what something they will look at, and if it is not, then that can become an audit observation. In terms of document, if the version control is not maintained or the documents have become obsolete in the sense that they were made more than a year back, that can be an observation for the auditor, because any document should be within 1 year of its earlier creation, and anything more than 1 year is considered redundant and obsolete and really may not be working. So that's one observation which usually auditors have. The other thing is documents are available, but they are not approved. So someone has created the document in the organization, it is lying somewhere, and it does not have a management approval. So you don't know whether all aspects have been considered or not. So that's one audit query. Inconsistencies within the same document. For example, RTO RPO values at one page is different and other pages are different, or there is inconsistency in different documents relating to one area. If there are any project overruns, then those are not approved by the management, and the project has been completed, but time overruns, lapses have not been discussed with the management or not approved. There's no conducted in business continuity and disaster recovery, but the auditor comes back. How do you know whether the training went by? So is there any measurement that you have had that the training is effective? So that's something that you need to look at. How do you measure that training is effective? When you do a DR walkthrough, the meeting is over, many points are discussed, and respective people make their respective changes and document, but there is no consolidated minutes of what were the changes that were discussed. So that's one area that can come up. Many times you do the drills and there are lessons learned which are documented, but the closures of those documents, of those lessons learned, is not on a timely basis, or they are left hanging, and focus is not given again on what were the lessons learned. Drill, but what were the lessons learned? If they are not closed, then that's one area of audit query. And likewise, there are a few others. If the organization, if the management is aware of certain risks, have they identified it themselves before the auditor asks them? So if you have your operations risk management process as part of ITDR, and that will give an evidence to the auditor that as you are aware of documenting it, and then the auditor asking you for something, and then you're saying, but that may not help. So these are the audit observations that I thought I'll share, and it will help the people to ensure that these areas are taken care of. And of course, the actual list can be much more depending on the environment, depending on the organization size and nature of the business. But these are the typical things that you should look at day-to-day basis. Some of the suggested readings, if you have interest, if you have time, do go through these. The Business Continuity Management Handbook is an excellent source, and it has a good level of detail on ITDR as well. So that's something that you can look at. And these are the wealth of information, wealth of knowledge that you can use and benefit from. So that was get this opportunity to be with all of you, and I would like to thank Madhusudan ji and Sohan ji from Alvin to give me this opportunity. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Rohit, and thank you, everyone. Hope you all have enjoyed. Kindly raise your questions. Rohit will be able to answer them. And just to begin with, Rohit, just a small thing. Just a couple of days back,
Yes,
was a what you call a problem with Google. For about 40 minutes, their operations were down. The Gmail, the YouTube, and other related.
Yes.
So, do you call it basically a BC problem,
Yes.
or a ITR problem, or an operational problem?
Depending on what is the impact, so Gmail was impacted. So as I was mentioning in the session, that if you have an email outage, you lose your communication capability, right? So if you lose your communication capability, then users are impacted. And among the outages, depending on the outage situation, depending on the industry and the circumstances, that will have an impact. So yes, it can be where users are impacted, they are not able to connect. And you have a dependency on Google because your email system is running, let's say, on Google or the Google platform. So you have a dependency on on a vendor. In such circumstances, perhaps one DR assessment can be how strong and how much reliable is your vendor. Perhaps a business case that can be made to the management to develop an alternative vendor, an alternative communication capability, such that you are able to have basic communication in place. And this can be email, it can be a basic picking up the phone and talking, it can be an employee information. So some basic communication capability should be available in a crisis situation is what the management would expect of a DR profession. And depending on what is your dependency on the vendor, you should have some alternative arrangements also.
Okay, so as you put it rightly while you were talking about the DR drills, myths and realities,
Yes,
I just want to add to it. Maybe please correct me because you are an expert. I am not.
sure, sure.
DR drills are basically nothing else but risk assessment exercise of the plan. Am I correct?
Yes, we can say so. Yeah, because what we are testing in the drill is basically your DR plan. Whatever is in your DR plan, that is what we are testing.
Okay, so basically it is a risk assessment of the plan.
Yes, yes.
In brief.
Risk
And
readiness of the plan, the readiness of the DR plan.
okay. Rohit, you come from a background which is, public-oriented field. You have a lot of exposure from this banking industry, from Barclays, from Deutsche,
Yeah,
and of course
yeah.
from a support service organization like IBM.
Yes,
And we have, I think, some participants joined from, I think, industry. Maybe Sanket is there or Theo is there, or maybe somebody else.
yeah,
So, COVID, we talk about COVID over the last almost say 8 months now,
yeah,
March onwards.
yeah.
The most impacted industry is IT, but yes,
Yes,
IT is providing all the support, and
yes,
banking is IT enabled.
yes,
Banking is, it was up, it was
yes,
all up. So
yes,
banking IT enabled basically. So two types. So we talk about resilience now.
yeah,
Why I'm using this word is resilience is because COVID has put to test the resilience of IT resilience as well as human resilience.
yes, yes, yes,
So these drills, this IT disaster recovery basically is more of handling the things which are related to the public in general. So
yeah, yeah,
how do you
yeah.
want to comment on this IT resiliency vis-a-vis human resiliency in providing the basic minimum services and outreach to the public?
Yes. So Madhusinti, basically, COVID was a big eye opener to all the professionals in the resiliency domain, business continuity professionals, DR professionals, and this was one completely unprecedented, catastrophic impact which all organizations face. And one thing that kept the entire businesses running, the one thing that kept the users running was information technology, right? And
Yes.
there was a complete dependency on information technology, be it from the simplest means of email communication or the collaborative tools that are available by means of Microsoft Teams or the Zoom platform or other platforms which are there. And the world entirely was operating because IT was there to support. So I think then in that context, a lot of new thoughts have come in, a lot of new approaches people are working on. And it is essential to recognize that, yes, now that this COVID has happened and people were able to work from home for a long period of time with whatever limitations in terms of the absence of a complete IT infrastructure, one thing that comes very strongly is the cyber risk, because cyber risk has increased so much in so many folds as compared to before COVID and as compared to after COVID. So cyber risk is one risk which can directly create a DR situation. If you're having a cyber attack, your users are impacted and your primary data center is impacted. So while you're working in a COVID situation, working from home, your data center is there, but there is a cyber risk. So it has only added to the complicated IT environment that we were already in. And what is now needed is to ensure that we are safe from an IT security point of view, from a cyber security point of view, from an end user education and awareness point of view. And the organization is always in these trying circumstances usually supportive of such situations, and it provides required support. So that has been my personal experience. I think IT has been a big support, without which perhaps it would have been very difficult for the business community world over to do any business at all.
Yeah, I think the scenario has changed now. Earlier, you mentioned about the education online now. Earlier,
Yeah.
we used to ask our kids why you are having the mobile in your hand, and now we are saying why you are not having the mobile in your hand. Our fault.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
before I request everyone, please raise any questions if you have. Just two information notes I want to put it. Uh, we have got very good support from all the participants, and there are repeat participants like Mr. Saibal Gupta, Anirudh, and so many others are there. Just wanted to announce that with the kind of patronage that we have got in the last 10 ISO knowledge sharing sessions, we have decided to host one full day event, which is called the Global ISO Knowledge Sharing Summit 2021 on 27th of February online. And the registration for the same will start from 7th of January. We'll keep all of you posted. So this was the brief information which I wanted to share. Now I would request anyone, please raise your questions so that Rohit can answer them. Maybe you can read on the screen also.
So hi Rohit, yeah, my name is Nitin,
Yeah.
and yeah, I understand like DR site you are talking about the physical setups and all. So
Yeah.
with regards to the near DR site and the far DR site, so
Yeah.
we know that most of the DR sites are now getting hosted in cloud environment.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
how about a local cloud provider? So
Mhm.
that will become inside a far DR site or as a near DR site?
See, cloud has given a lot of advantages because once you have a cloud environment, then you no more have to recover from a data center.
Mm-hmm.
You know that's the basic difference. So if you have a local cloud service provider, then I would probably say it would be equivalent to a near DR. And if you have an international cloud service provider, assuming that the regulators permit you to have your data outside the country, then probably it can be considered as a distant DR. But the cloud gives you very distinct advantages as compared to a physical data center.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, any more questions, please? Mr. Saibal Gupta, you want to ask something?
No, Madhusudan ji, it is very fine session, interactive and informative session I have attended. Thank you, Mr. Rohit, for enlightening us with your vast knowledge.
Thank you,
And
sir.
also thanks to Alvin Integrated Service organizing such a good webinar again.
Thank you, sir.
It's all because of you people who are participating, patronizing us, and speakers like Rohit and others who have cooperated to join and share their knowledge, because it is basically giving back to the society. We are trying to give back to the society in our own way. And without your participation, it is not possible, Saibalji. May I request Rachit wants to say a few words? Rachit Gandhi, if you can hear me. Are you able to hear me, Rachit? Okay, Rachit is not there, I think, and then probably anyone else wants to say something like Mr. We have Mr. Mohammed from Nigeria. Are you still there, Mr. Mohammed from Nigeria? Dr. Abid, are you there?
Hello, Dr. Abid speaking. Yes, I am here. So,
Yeah, please. Want to hear a few words from you. Your question or something you want to share, please.
okay,
Please,
thank
Dr.
you,
Abid.
Rohit Verma, right? I was confusing it with the dangerous Rohit Sharma. Thanks for a very enlightened information about this topic. I am actually not really from a business background. I'm more from science and technology, R&D. But today I had learned a lot, and it was a very descriptive, a very nice presentation, as well as you could say seminar. Thanks a lot, and thanks to the Alvin Integrated Services, because this is the second webinar that I'm attending, and really, it's good to be back like a student and learning things with the evolving world. As I remember, at the end of my PhD, my supervisor used to tell me that the time is gone when you would say, I'm a biologist and I'm a chemist and I am a physicist. Now everything is interdisciplinary. So everyone should know everything. And these efforts are really appreciative. I really appreciate, and I really thank a lot Mr. Rohit Verma for his invaluable services that he provided us today. Thank you.
So nice.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, so nice of you, Dr. Abid. That's because you are participating again and again and giving us patronage. We have Divya. Divya, can you hear me? Divya Singh. May I request Narhar Deshpande?
Yes, Narhar here. I've been attending the seminars by Alvin Integrated, and
yeah, we know that.
I particularly enjoyed Rohit Verma sir's presentation today. I'm not a technical person in the IT sense, but as Dr. Abid has said, it's always good to know, about different technologies and different thoughts, and that is that purpose has been very well served today with a brilliant presentation. In spite of not being from IT, I felt that the way Rohit sir presented, I felt I knew it all, So that was the brilliance of the presentation. And whenever possible, I do attend Alvin Integrated seminars because I am a corporate trainer myself. So sometimes it's not possible to join in. But whenever possible, I've joined in, and it has always enhanced my knowledge of things that I not normally deal with, So knowledge acquisition, I think, is the responsibility and the passion that we all should bring into our lives. And Rohit sir has contributed a lot today to my knowledge of, things that are really beyond me. But I really understood, and I understood it conceptually, mainly because of the brilliant way he presented. So thank you, MS sir. Thank you, Alvin. And overall, Mr. Rohit sir. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Narar. So nice of you. You rightly proved the saying, like the roof also needs the pillars. The trainer also needs a mentor. So we are all mentor to each other as long as we are willing to learn from each other. We have Rushabh Mehta. Rushabh, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. First of all, I would like to thank Alvin Integrated Technology Services for, again and again hosting this ISO series as well as other webinar series on multiple security topics. I truly appreciate that knowledge sharing of Alvin Integrated Services. And then I would like to sincerely thank Rohit for bringing up this wonderful presentation and delivering it so effortlessly that, from the recipient side, it never felt it like we are not from this domain. So thank you so much for that. And I do have one question for Rohit.
Sure.
So the question goes like, in the real disastrous or catastrophic situation, most of us would be in the panic mode, and we won't be in the regular mode like we would have been while testing our DR drills. Because DR drill has completely a different objective in most of the real-time situation within the organization, that is to, successfully achieve the DR testing objective, successfully pass the DR plans, which is not going to be the case in the real disastrous or the catastrophic situation.
Yes.
Hence, like for majority of the companies like internet banking providers or e-commerce websites or stock exchanges,
Yes.
those people may tend that, their senior most management, someone like CEO or CIO or COO, interrupting and, taking up the front seat and driving the steer and asking the CISO or the BCM head or even the professionals around incident response and disaster recovery to take a back seat and, just need to abide their orders. During those situations, how do you see that, well drafted DR plans getting really failed?
Okay, so usually, my experience has been that in case of situations like disaster recovery or business continuity, when the management has hired a BCM professional or a DR professional, they trust on the advice, knowledge, and experience of that professional. And the very reason they have hired the professional is to steer them out of such situation if the management faces or the company faces such events. So usually the management support the inputs which are given by the BCM heads or the DR heads. There is a there's a whole management decision making process. No single person makes a decision of either invoking the BCM or invoking the DR. It's always a collaborative joint effort and joint decision making by some senior management team members like the IT head, the business heads, the senior management, and of course representatives from the BCM and the IT teams. So when you make a collective assessment of the situation, you decide the pros and cons of the situation, you make an assessment how long the situation will continue, and if it continues beyond a point, all come together and take a joint decision to either invoke or not to invoke BCM or DR. So usually it is not a it is a collective decision, and managements usually support the views and the suggestions given by all the experts coming from the table. So I don't think we should have any concern on only the management driving it, but it's a collective decision always during such crisis situations, and that's where the crisis management team actually comes in. And depending on the situation, the respective team members from the crisis management team are called in and quick decisions are taken. And that's where the concept of crisis management team comes in to take important decisions.
Thank you so much, Rohit.
Thank you so much, Rohit.
Pleasure.
Anyone else wants to say something? I would request Saurabh Tiwari, could you hear me? Is Saurabh Tiwari there? Saurabh? Okay, he is not there.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm here. There's some power issue at my end.
Saurabh wants to hear a few words from you, and we want you to sum up the session.
Yeah, see, this is my first session for the ITDR. I'm working as a business quantity, business quantity team in an organization, and this is my first session with Alvin, and my first session on ITDR also. So yes, it gives a very good knowledge, and the best part, the Rohit sir arranged all the slides in such a way that by reading the slides you are getting, okay, this means this means that, and this means that. So yes, we have few things in ITDR. We have ITDR is basically used for the technology recovery, and BCM is for the people recovery, infrastructure recovery, and services recovery of critical businesses. So that is the difference between BCM and ITDR, and they both go kind of hand in hand to provide uninterrupted services to the clients for any company. So this is the difference between ITDR and BCM, and how they collectively work together to ensure the
I think his connection is gone, probably.
How we are dealing with that, and when both are down, what we need to do. What are the things which are involved in the DR documentation, and how manual manual testing, what we call manual drill or automated drill is difference. By clicking of a button, or as Wilson said, by clicking of a button, we can switch over and switch back to do the switch over and switch back. So all these things I learned today, and prior to this session, I don't have much knowledge of ITDR, and thanks to sir for providing all these details to me. So and it's a very good session. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Saurabh. And we look forward to your participation in our future webinars and the next summit, which we are hosting on 27th of February. And
Sure.
a final word from Mr. Mohammad Mahadi, if he is hearing me. Mr. Mohammad Mahadi.
Hello.
Yeah, Mr. Mohammad. Salam. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. How are you?
Very good, very good. Good to see you. Good to have you as our esteemed delegate on this session delivered by Rohit. We would like to hear a few final words from you. You have been patiently listening for the last almost 1.5 hours now. So it's your turn to say something, and we sum up this session for today. Over to you, Mr. Mohammed.
I don't have anything to say, but to thank you as very knowledgeable and very I really appreciate for the presentation. Very nice presentation. I don't have anything to say, but I really appreciate for the presentation. And I enjoyed the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This is this is the, you can say, the food we need to sustain. Yeah. If you join, we are able to run it. So thank you so much. Anybody wants to say anything, or we just sum it up now? It's already half an hour extra, but the time is not a constraint as long as Rohit is having no problem. And anybody wants to say something, please. It's open for all. Anyone wants to say anything, please feel free. We'll go on for 5 more minutes.
Hello, yeah, this is Chetan Sakha.
Hi, Chetan. Welcome.
Hi. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Rohit sir, for your input on the BCP and DR. I've been practicing business continuity management from last 5.5 years. So understood the very well prepared slides. And good to hear from an industry leader. So kind of you to give the information and the knowledge on this. So it was really good session for me to enhance my knowledge as well. Thank you so much again.
Welcome, Chetan. Good you attended. Thank you so much.
Yeah, please. Anyone wants to say anything? Please, 5 minutes more. Mr. Mohammad Sadaf Akubal wants to say something. Okay, Rohit. So we sum up the session. You wants to say a line or two finally about the today's this thing. Being you the speaker today, you shared your knowledge given to the society, and wants to have a 1 or 2 line from you, and then we sum up the session.
But I would only like to thank Madhu Sujanti, yourself, and Sohanji for all your efforts to make this happen. We know it is not an easy task to arrange any event, and in these days when people are challenged for various time constraints, to reach out to so many people, get them into webinars, and have a topic of interest which will benefit everyone. It requires huge time and efforts and sincerity and dedication on the part of the organizing team. So thank you, Alvin. Thank you, Madhu Sujanti, for making this happen. Thank you for considering me and giving me the opportunity. And thank you to all the lovely audience who could participate and help me share the inputs. It's always nice to give back and share what you have learned from the industry and share it further so that the cycle continues and we all grow together with sharing each other's knowledge.
And we do not carry this information overload with us.
Yes,
Something tells
it's
me that
always,
something tells me that I should request Dr. Abid Ali to finally sum up the program today. Dr. Abid Ali.
Okay, once again, I am here. I've been listening to all the questions and everything else, the opinions from other respected participants. I would again sum up that it was a very enlightened program performed by our respected speaker, Mr. Rohit Verma. I do not know, whenever I say Rohit Verma, my mouth likes to sound Rohit Sharma. Sorry for that. Because of a lot of cricket and because of
both are hitting. Both are hitting. Both are hitmen. One is a DR hitman, one is a sixer.
Okay.
Hitman.
And a couple of participants just said that it did not feel that we are not from this IT business. It was a very nice to attend this. Again, out of gratitude, I'm really, really thankful to Alvin Integrated Services as well as the speaker, Rohit Verma.
Thank you,
and
sir. Thank you so
hopefully
much.
we will be connected with Alvin Integrated Services in the future as well for webinars like this. And as they say, learning is a non-stop phenomena and education can never be completed. So with this, I'm really thankful for everyone and for the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for summing up, Dr. Saab. Thank you for summing up. Thank you for summing up. Yeah. So thank you everyone once again. Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Alvin.
Thank you, sir.
We look forward to many more such sessions. Thank you so much. Have a nice weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sohanji.